Hey guys, my name's Christine. Welcome back to the channel. I have avoided doing too many negative reviews since I started this channel. I wanted to keep this as positive as possible. Obviously, I might read books sometimes that I don't like, and I'm not gonna, hide that fact, but I try to stay as positive as I can on this channel. However, I watched something and I need to talk about how much I hate it. And I hate it so, 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 so much. We are going to be talking about the Netflix series Monster, the Ed Gein Story. Now, I am not going to get into the details of what he did. I will have to cover the basics, but okay, so I like true crime. A lot of people like true crime. A lot of women in particular enjoy true crime. I'm not exactly sure why that is. I've heard some theories. One of them is, women like to watch or consume true crime so that they know what to do if they find themselves in these dangerous situations. I don't know if I believe that. Yeah, there are some stories where it's like, oh, that particular person was brilliant in the way that they handled that. They managed to survive because of how they handled it. So maybe there's some truth, but to me, that's never really been a reason that I think makes sense. Two things that do make sense to me are the idea of watching true crime as some kind of catharsis, because it is a dangerous world that we live in. Because of the victims of the types of true crime that get covered in, true crime podcasts and miniseries and docuseries and movies and whatever else, more often than not, they are women. So I get that, there's certain fears that women have that men maybe don't have as intensely. And it can be a cathartic experience watching that type of stuff. It can be a way to help you process those fears so that you can get to the other side of them, I guess. Another point that I very much agree with when it comes to true crime is it gives a voice to the victims who so often are just, well, here's somebody who killed 47 women and that's all we ever hear about them. It's like, but who were they? Who were they before they unfortunately met Ted Bundy? Who were they before they met Richard Ramirez? I want to know more about them as people than just nameless victims, So I think that's sort of part of it. I do think also, if we're going to be honest, there is a certain level of just macabre curiosity, looky-loo kind of, and that's an uncomfortable truth. I think people who consume true crime, you have to be honest that there's something in you that likes to know the grisly details. And that, that is not for everybody. And obviously I get that. I'm not here to try to convince anybody, oh, go watch true crime. If you're into it, you're into it. And if you're not, you're very much not. So that's fine. Live and let live. Now, getting to Ed Gein. In order to tell you why I hated this series so much, I need to tell you just a little bit about him. I'm not going to go into too much detail. Ed Gein was a guy in the 50s who doesn't actually qualify as a serial killer. In order to be considered a serial killer, there has to be 3 killings with a significant cooling off period in between each one. He only killed 2 people that we know of. Maybe 3, maybe more, but he confessed to 2. His deal was always way more grave robbing. And he would rob graves and bring the bodies back to his house and make skin suits and masks out of their bodies and keep pieces and put skulls on his bedposts. And he was just a really fucked up guy, just gross, the grossest of the gross. So grave robbing was always more his shtick. He had 2 victims. One was Mary Hogan, who owned a tavern in town, and the other one was Bernice Warden, who owned a hardware store. Both of them, he admitted to killing them. So They are the only two known victims. Now, his brother, he probably killed. Just the circumstances of it. But, he never admitted to it. And the police, because this was before anybody knew anything else about him, just said like, oh, he died in the fire. So, okay, fine. So that's all the attention we're gonna pay to Ed Gein's crimes. If you're interested in true crime, you probably already know the name. He is very famous, not so much because he had a high body count or anything like that, but because he was the inspiration for Psycho and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and the Silence of the Lambs. But here's... okay, no. We'll get to it. So, the TV show is hot garbage from the beginning. It is just the most exploitative trash I have ever seen in my entire life. It makes up most of its source material. It accuses him of crimes that so far we don't know that he committed, just because, well, he only killed 2 people, so let's make up a few. You can't do that. Here's the thing. If you like true crime, if you want to consume it, that's fine. If you're going to do a fictionalized version, like a biopic kind of thing, where you've got actors acting out the scenario rather than a straight up documentary, you have to be respectful of what happened. You have to stick to the facts. Otherwise, it's gross. It is so exploitative. I do not agree with it at all. And I say that as somebody who watches, I do limit myself to one podcast and the occasional docuseries. I don't watch a whole lot of it. I don't consume too much of it because it is depressing. But if you're going to go down that path, you need to stick to what actually happened or not stray too far off. Obviously, any biopic of anybody, serial killer or not, is going to be somewhat made up because you don't know what happened. You don't know the circumstances of exactly what happened and what conversations were had with whom, when. So that's fine. But you've got a show like, and it's weird because it came from the same guy, Ryan Murphy. I've got issues with that guy to begin with. But he did the clunkiest title in the history of titles, which was Dahmer, Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story. Like, okay. And that one was actually, it was very well done. It was creepy as hell and it was very upsetting, but I feel like they stuck to the truth pretty well. Like, obviously, some artistic liberties have to be taken, but I feel like they did a good job of sticking to mostly what was real. So I very much enjoyed that one, like as much as you can enjoy a story like that. And I thought Evan Peters did a fantastic job playing Jeffrey Dahmer. So yeah, I really liked that. I didn't watch Monster, the Menendez brothers, because I never really cared about that story, to be honest. It's just rich people killing rich people. Maybe it was for money. Maybe it was because the father was abusive. I don't really know. Just that one has never really resonated with me, so I didn't watch it. And I knew that I had issues with Ryan Murphy because American Horror Story, I watched the first 2 seasons. I liked the first season, which was, haunted house kind of story. I liked the second season, which I think was, I can't remember if the second season was the circus or if it was the asylum. I liked the asylum one to a degree, but where the show really loses me is that he is constantly putting real people into his show as characters, and I just think it's kind of gross. Anne Frank is in an episode for no reason, like the ghost of Anne Frank, I think. I can't remember. It's been so long since I saw it. Richard Ramirez is in a season. I didn't see that one. Elizabeth Short, who is otherwise known as the victim of the Black Dahlia murder, she's in an episode. Like, it's just gross. Don't use people as entertainment in that way. And I get the irony of what I'm saying. I get it's hypocritical because I am entertained, I guess, by true crime, but you just don't do that. It's just not right. Like, tell their story or don't, but don't have them show up as a freaking character in a horror anthology series. That's not okay. I don't know why I'm drawing the line there, but I am. I don't like that. So my history with Ryan Murphy is not great. I'm torn about Charlie Hunnam's performance in this show because I hated the voice he came up with so very much. There's no truth to that voice. He sounds like Winnie the Pooh, and it's terrible. There are interviews with Ed Gein that you can go watch on YouTube, like not videoed, but audio. He just sounds like a regular person. So I don't know where the hell that voice came up with, where he came up with that voice. Also, his accent wanders into Irish a few times, and I'm like, this is Wisconsin that this is set in, so I don't know what's going on here. So yeah, I don't love that. There is an episode, I can't remember if it's the last episode or the second to last episode. I think it's second to last, where he is in the mental asylum where he was incarcerated for the rest of his life, and he's talking to a psychiatrist, and he finally accepts that he is schizophrenic. And that scene is very well acted, and it's really well done. But the issue is, how much do you want to humanize somebody who did the things that he did? The show worked overtime as hard as they could to just make him this sweet old man at the end and humanize him. And on the one hand, they're trying to say all these disgusting, horrible things that he did, and then they switch gears completely for the last 2 episodes and do everything they can in their power to try to make you feel sorry for him. No, sorry. It's no. I get that you want to find the humanity in this character in order to portray him, but I disagree with humanizing him to that degree, because no matter what else, he was still a psycho who did some really messed up shit. Like, he made lamps out of people. Come on. I mean, we've all heard of the nipple belt, and that was a real thing that he really did. The biggest issue I had with this show was the amount of garbage that they just absolutely made up out of nowhere. So Abigail is this character in the show, and she was a real person who claimed to have had a casual relationship with Ed Gein, but she said she was never in his house. It never went further than a couple of dates. I think she went bowling with him once, and she had a couple of dinners with him, and that's as far as it went. In this show, she sees his house. She sees what's in his house. She encourages him to dig up more bodies and encourages him to, how shall I put this, get romantic with them. So yeah, like that, none of that was true. Why are you making that up? I don't understand. And there's a whole episode where she moves to New York and she tries to make it as a photographer. I'm like, why am I watching Abigail, whoever, I forget her last name, why am I watching her in New York try to be a photographer? That's got nothing to do with anything. This is garbage. Why are we talking about her? Then you have this weird time jumping thing that's going on, and it's cutting into the future of Alfred Hitchcock making Psycho. And it took a lot of inspiration from Ed Gein, but it was not a biography or anything. It spent way too much time there with some of the worst prosthetics I've ever seen on an actor. Is it so hard to just hire somebody who's fat? Like, really, can we stop with the fat suits? Because it looks terrible every time. So you've got that. And then in another episode, they jump forward to the 70s where they're talking to Tobe Hooper, who made Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which was also very much inspired by Ed Gein, yes, but it wasn't, again, it's not a biopic. Like, these, they took some of the stuff that was found in his house and they ran with it. Okay, fine. But then they cut back to the 50s and it shows Ed Gein like killing 2 people, chasing them through the forest with a chainsaw, and killing them with a chainsaw, and then swinging it around his head like Leatherface does. First of all, Ed Gein was 5'4" and 100 and nothing pounds. That guy wasn't chasing anybody anywhere, especially not carrying a chainsaw. That never happened. That murder never happened. They've got him killing a babysitter. That never happened. And although it is creepy to think about, he did babysit kids in the town, but he never took them to his house and played, what's under the skull with them. Like, what the hell? Do you think maybe somebody would have brought that up if he had taken kids to his house and played games using human body parts? Really? Come on. Stop making shit up. It is so disrespectful to... Now, okay, speaking of disrespectful, here's the worst part of this show. And it is hard to say what is the worst part of this show, but this is a really big one. His second victim was Bernice Warden. She owned a hardware store. And in this show, they have him in a romantic relationship with her, where she is portrayed as this very silly, heartbroken, looking for love kind of woman. And if I were any kind of family member of hers, like I know she had a kid, maybe she has grandkids who are living today. If I saw that and I was her living grandson or granddaughter, and I saw the way that she was portrayed, or the implication that she had anything to do with Ed Gein outside of selling him antifreeze on the last day that she was seen alive, I would sue the hell off of Netflix. I really would. I think that was so gross to imply that they had anything to do with each other, let alone a sexual relationship. That is so disgusting. You can't do that with real people. If you want to tell the story of Ed Gein, you go right ahead, but you tell it using only the facts. Yeah, okay, sometimes you have to take poetic license. I get that. But you can't do that. You cannot have people boinking each other who had nothing to do with each other. Another thing that I really hated was that it was implied that he helped catch Ted Bundy, which he absolutely did not. He had nothing to do with Ted Bundy. It's implied that he received letters from Richard Speck. No, that never happened. And that the letters from Richard Speck and his own expertise in decapitation helped him, or gave him, information that he passed on to the FBI, and they were able to catch Ted Bundy because of it. The FBI never visited Ed Gein in the asylum. Once he was in there, that was the last anybody ever saw of him. What are you doing? Why is that even part of this show? I don't understand why that was even a suggestion. And I saw this guy on YouTube whose name is Beardo Gets Scared, and he called the scene Timu Mindhunter, which absolutely is what it was, because you've got actors who look like the two actors from Mindhunter, which is a great show, and they've got them coming in to the asylum and talking to Ed Gein, and it's just like, what are we doing, guys? What is this? None of this ever happened. I don't know why you're wasting anybody's time. Why didn't you cover the trial if you ran out of material? The last thing that I will say is that in the final episode, when Ed Gein dies, he is welcomed to heaven by a string of serial killers, including Edmund Kemper and Charlie Manson, and they all welcome him to heaven, and there's nurses dancing around, and it's a dance party, and I was just sitting there with my jaw on the floor like, what is happening? What the fuck am I watching? This is garbage. I don't think I'll ever watch another Ryan Murphy production again. Apparently the next murder story that they're going to cover for Monster is Lizzie Borden, which is baffling because Lizzie Borden was acquitted of the murders. A lot of people still think she did it. Okay, fine. But she never did anything violent up to then, and she never did anything violent after. So what are you going to fill your 8 episodes with? Horse shit is my guess. I'm done. I'm not watching anything else that comes out of the mind of Ryan Murphy, because as good as Dahmer was, this was absolute trash, start to finish. It made me angry. I was confused as to what I was doing. I was bored for half of it. It worked so hard to humanize him after working so hard to make him look like this insatiable killer, which again, I'm not excusing what he did, but he only had 2 victims. So he's not, if you want somebody with a high body count, do that next time. I don't understand what they're thinking. I hated it. I hated it. I hated it so much. And as much as I want this channel to be a positive light, do not watch Monster, the Ed Gein Story. It is garbage. It is, I hate to say it because I don't want to sound like, some Karen clutching her pearls, but it is offensive. Like the way that people are portrayed. I can't, I just hated it so much. And I needed to tell you, if you haven't watched it yet, don't, please. Somebody's got to stop Ryan Murphy. Let it start with us, okay? Because I'm done. I'm done with that guy. Never watching anything else he does. This is just, it was beyond shit. I hated it so much. You should go watch Beardo Gets Scared. I think it's actually on his secondary channel, Beardo Gets Scared too. But yeah, his review of the series is spot on. It's just, oh God, I hated it so much. So anyway, that's it for me this week. This was just something I had to get off my chest, and we'll get back to books real soon, I think. All right, thanks for watching.